wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. Welcome back, Keith. It's been a little while. We had a kind of a brief hiatus over the weekend and late last week until today. We had a bye week, and that kind of went by. Still in first place in the NFC West, and we're going to take a look forward to where we stand in the playoffs. If the playoffs were to happen today, where are we at? Who would we match up with? Who else is in? All that good stuff. Welcome in.
Yeah, and this is going to be this kind of an interesting looking show because you go through and you kind of look at where the Seahawks stand and the rest of the NFC, and honestly, there's one team that looks good, and then a whole bunch of mediocrity. And even, the Vikings that have a good record haven't shown to be a good team. So it's an interesting year. A lot of parity.
Yeah, except for the Eagles. The Eagles look good, 9-1. They dropped their last game though. It's an interesting road ahead for them. It doesn't look like they're going to run into too much more trouble. The Vikings, I don't know.
The Vikings got crushed.
Yeah.
This week.
And they're up against the Patriots, and the Patriots had an okay game against the Jets and pulled one out there at the end, which was kind of crazy with the punt return with 5 seconds to go.
The Vikings are 8-2, but their net points is -2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they've looked okay in the regular season. They may not be a playoff team though. I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs. I just don't know if they're going to win a game.
Yeah, it's
going up against a better team. Now, when you take a look at the pairings right now, they'd be up against the number 7 seed, currently 49ers ball club at 5-4. While you might look at the 49ers.
A rough game for the Vikings. I think
it's a tough matchup for anybody. It's a tough matchup for the Seahawks, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But 5-4 49ers, second in the NFC West. They play the Saints this week. Probably end up winning that game, but you never know. But currently 5-4 against the Vikings at 8-2. I don't think those records have any meaning whatsoever. You throw those out, you get into the playoffs. The 49ers would obviously travel. The Vikings are indoors at this point now, so they don't have to worry about weather. And I think you're right. It's a matchup nightmare, I think, for any team to face the 49ers. 49ers have a really nice defense. They've been playing adequate on offense. Vikings have a pretty decent defense too. But their offense is kind of explosive, especially with Jefferson at wide receiver.
Yeah, but then they did nothing in this last game whatsoever. And in the game before, they did nothing for 3 quarters. And then suddenly Jefferson decided to go out of his mind in the 4th quarter and won a game that they kind of didn't deserve. But overall, I mean, they've won a lot in these fluky ways. I'm not sure their record is an indication of how good they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
interesting. So what do you think about the Eagles this year, Keith? Early on when we were predicting, I thought that they would be the class of the NFC East, but only by a little bit. I mean, the Cowboys really have played well this year, especially with Dak Prescott being gone for a while.
I thought Dallas was going to be up there. I didn't think the Eagles were going to be this good, mainly because I didn't trust Jalen Hurts. They're now 9-1. They lost their, not this week, but the week before, and they almost lost this week. It took, a last second, field goal to get the win there, and that wasn't a great outing for them either. Especially after getting beat, you'd expect them to come out and be better, and they kind of weren't. So I don't know. The Cowboys, struggled at times early in the season. Then Dak got hurt, and you're thinking, man, their season's probably over. But they righted the ship on the rest of the roster while Dak was out. Then Dak comes back, and the offense takes off. They look like perhaps the best team in the conference right now.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Dallas fan, but they
I'm not either.
Yeah, they do look to be competently coached and all of that. But I'm just not. I don't know. I think it's the Eagles team, to kind of playoffs to lose. The Cowboys could be definitely there. Currently, the Cowboys would match up against the Bucks, and I think that's a favorable matchup for them. And then the Eagles,
the Seahawks would get the Giants,
yeah,
a team they already beat, and they already beat fairly handily, and looked really good doing it. Really, the Giants struggled to do anything offensively in that game, and that's a matchup for Seattle. I wouldn't mind the home game against a team you can beat, and set yourself up for round 2, because I don't think anyone's picking the Giants in that game.
Yeah, that's an interesting matchup, and head to head, it'd be in Seattle again. So I kind of like the odds there. The Eagles have the bye. Things are going to change, obviously. What do you think of Seattle's odds of actually just making the playoffs? I think right now the speculation, the odds makers have it at about 63, 64%, not completely going all in, even though Seattle's looked really nice. They've in first place in the NFC West, 6-4 record. The 3 upcoming games in a row look favorable for Seattle. I think they do as well. If you look at the schedule, I think we could be at 9 wins. Where do you think we're at? I mean, position wise,
I think they're in good shape. The win against the Bucks in Germany a week ago would have been nice, because that would have put them at 7-3, and I think at that point you'd be looking at just about 100% chance of them making the playoffs. That loss, plus everyone still has the lingering, like, this is what we feared type feeling. As far as Seattle's expectations were so low, and when they came out and looked good, it was surprising, but everyone's kind of just waiting for that, for them to go back to what we thought they were going to be. And I think that's why their percentage is so low, but they're in first place and they've got 3 winnable games in a row. And that's going to get them to 9. They're still going to be in first place at that point. It's going to be hard for any team to knock them out, because you're looking at a team like Washington or the Falcons having to jump up and knock them out, not to mention the fact that 49ers have to continue winning and overtake Seattle, which at 5-4 they haven't done. They haven't played as well as we think they should have for the quality of their roster. They just keep getting caught and losing games that they probably shouldn't. And so they're, they've got to get caught by San Francisco and another team. That would be the Lions, the Falcons, or Washington, are kind of the teams that are in there. And honestly, I don't like any of those teams as a playoff team. So I really like where Seattle sits. I think they're in good position.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think of this game coming up? I mean, they happened to beat the Denver Broncos, which was great. And we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. But do you see any hangups here at all? Or do you think, as a gimme game goes in the NFL, this is about as close as it gets for Seattle? Get right game.
It is a get right game. The Raiders have underperformed. This is a team that was a playoff team a year ago. Then they added, some major talent. Didn't really lose much. And you're thinking, okay, they're going to make another step. And they're in a very tough divisions. You're like, okay, well, just because they're better doesn't mean that the record's going to be better. But they've taken a massive step back. Josh McDaniels just looks overmatched every week. And then the injury bug hit them, and they've lost, their top 2 receivers and their top running back and their top tight end. They just have no weapons left. I'm looking at this game and I'm like, I'm not sure how Derek Carr manufactures offense for them against Seattle's defense. And I don't see how that defense, which has struggled, slows down Seattle. I mean, this game looks like it's going to be Seattle winning this one, going away.
Anything else on the schedule that you think could hang up Seattle other than maybe the Chiefs right now? I mean, that 49er game really stands out, but
49er game stands out. The Chiefs game stands out. And then I'm looking at the 2 Rams games. Even though the Rams are a shell of what they were last year, they still got Aaron Donald in the middle, and that's Seattle's weakness on their offensive line. And for some reason, Sean McVay just seems to have Pete Carroll's number, in the same way that Pete Carroll seems to have Shanahan's number in San Francisco. It's kind of a weird thing. And so I'm a little worried about those games. Not that I think that, Seattle's the better team in those matchups, but is there something about them that I'm never going to take those ones for granted?
So the one game you didn't mention is the Jets. The Jets are the other team on this schedule with an actual winning record other than the 49ers and the Chiefs. The Jets are at 6-4 currently. We'll play them on January 1st, so quite a ways down the road, 6 games from now. But it's a home game. Have you seen anything out of the Jets that would concern you?
Not early on. They were winning, and I thought it looked like Zach Wilson might have taken a step forward.
5-1 or something like that.
Yeah, and since then they haven't been. I mean, they only give up. They lost 10-3 to New England. They only scored 3 points, and that's not a great defensive team in New England. It's hard to see the Jets maintaining this as long as Zach Wilson continues to play as poorly as he has over the last month.
I'm really surprised they haven't put Flacco in there. Honestly, with a 6-4 record, you kind of want to win. And they're in position right now. They're the 8th seed in the AFC, just out of it. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I was a little surprised because, I know they want to get Wilson in. They want to evaluate him. They want to see if he is the guy they thought they drafted 2nd overall. Give him a chance to develop and get better. But I'm not seeing development from him that makes me think that this is going to work out. You look at even, Josh Fields is a good example. He's a guy that has nothing around him, kind of similar to what's going on in New York. But you can see the light has turned on. He's starting to make the right reads. He's starting to really flash, quality play. And the things that reason why people had him as a 1st round pick, they're coming through on the field. I don't see that from Zach Wilson. I thought he was going to be there at the beginning of the year and they were winning. And I was like, okay, maybe, he was hurt, but they had Flacco. But then once he came in, they still won a couple games. And you're thinking, okay, maybe, but man, he has just fallen off and looks not a good player right now. So until something changes at quarterback, I don't see the Jets making the playoffs.
So if you were to go 1, 2, 3 with teams favored to make it to the NFC Championship team out of the current teams that are in the playoffs, and we can talk about some bubble teams here in a minute, but you've got the Eagles, Vikings, Seahawks, Bucks, Cowboys, Giants, and 49ers round out the top 7. What are your top 3 in this class, even though those are the current rankings?
Eagles, Cowboys, Seattle, San Francisco.
Wow. I thought for sure you'd put San Francisco ahead of Seattle.
San Francisco kind of deserves that. So let's go Eagles, Cowboys, Niners, Seattle. I'm okay with that because they kicked Seattle's ass.
Yeah, they did, but you know what? That was week 2. Seattle is such a different team now.
Yeah,
physically and mentally,
way better. Their defense has been way better. They're just such a better team. But it was also a thumping. and San Francisco has the talent to just go on a tear and go back to the NFC Championship game like they did last year. I mean, they were the third place team, or the fourth place. They were the third place team in the NFC West, and still made it to the NFC title game against the Rams before they got beat. And honestly, that's a talented roster.
It is. And it's talented in the right spots. And it's amazing that they're 5-4. I think they match up and line up against Seattle really well. And that's why it's a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think that Seattle's, it's hard because we just played the Buccaneers and didn't look good. And that kind of throws you off a little bit. I think, you take the previous 4 games, we won. We went 4-0 in the previous 4 games. And each of those games looked dominant. And then you get the Bucs, you kind of lay an egg, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the team going forward. We kind of need to wash this out, in the next 3 weeks and really find out. We've got an opportunity. We've got the Raiders, Rams, and Panthers coming up before the 49ers game to really kind of figure it out, get in sync, get right, and go in there and challenge them, as we're playing our best football of the season. Then let's talk, because we could win all those games, and 49ers could drop 2 of 3, and we might be in command at that point. So
yeah, I mean, the 49ers depth or lack thereof has shown itself a little bit, but overall the quality on their roster, if you look at their offensive line, their defensive line, their linebackers, that is a really good roster. And Jimmy Garoppolo is not the greatest quarterback, but he's shepherding that ship pretty well and has for the last few years. So they're a challenge. I still think Dallas has looked really good lately, and the Eagles, even though they last couple of weeks have not been great, they came out looking amazing. And every team has a little dip in the middle when they come out really strong. The question is, do they get back to that level? I think they do. And, that's what we'll see. The 49ers are tough. The other 2 teams we just talked about are tough. Underneath these 4, I think it drops off quite a ways, because you look at the rest of the, the teams that are in there with the Giants and the Bucks and the Vikings. I know that they have a great record, but honestly, I'm not impressed. And just whoever else makes it from the NFC, it's just really hard to see any of those 4 teams or 3 teams competing with the top 4. And yes, I know.
So you're talking Vikings, Seattle, Bucks, and Giants.
Yeah, I just don't see them on the same level as Eagles, Cowboys, Seahawks, 49ers.
And when you take a peek just behind the 7th seed 49ers, it doesn't get really any better at all. So you take a look at the bubble teams. The Commanders are 8th seed currently, just out of the playoffs. The Falcons, the Lions, the Cardinals, the Packers, Saints, Rams, Panthers, Bears rounded out.
The Packers are 4-7, and you look at them and they always feel like, are they a sleeping giant? Can they go on a run and get themselves in as the 7 seed, and then screw over somebody's playoff chances by winning a game in there? But honestly, they play the Titans this week, and the Packers will not be favored in that game. The Titans very much will be, and I think another loss probably eliminates them.
Yes, along with the Rams. Yeah. And we had mentioned that in our last show that we thought the Rams were done, and then they lost this last game as well.
Cooper Kupp's on injured reserve, and they just lost to Arizona. Arizona looked terrible for the 3 weeks before that win. So there's not much going on there. It's hard to see any of those teams making a run. That's Arizona's true. 4-6. They've pretty much got to run the table. I mean, the Packers would have to run the table and get some help. Arizona looks and the Lions look like they would probably have to run the table to get in. Do you trust either of those teams to do that?
No, none of those teams. None of those teams down
capable.
There. No.
Yeah,
I like this. I like the Seahawks' chances. I mean, sitting at 6-4, the way that we've been playing, what you want to do is you definitely want to go try to win your division. Mm-hmm. And the Seahawks are in the driver's seat right now with that. But, we lose one, the 49ers win one. They're in first place because they've got the tiebreaker.
We are recording this on Monday before the start of Monday Night Football, where the 49ers will be playing, and a win tonight ties the 49ers with Seattle, and they have the tiebreaker because of the one win in the head-to-head. So
that's true. That's true.
It evens things. And so you look at the schedule and what you got to do, and that one game against the 49ers looms huge because the winner of that game probably wins the division, because if it's the 49ers, then not only is it another loss for Seattle and a win for San Francisco, but they also have the tiebreaker over Seattle, which means Seattle would have to be a full game ahead of San Francisco by the end of the season to take the division. If Seattle wins that game, that's a win over them that, it pushes Seattle into the advantage. And as we said, Seattle's going to be favored in these next 3 weeks, and they need to go take care of business. And if they do that, at 9-4, they beat San Francisco to get to 10-4. And you're looking at, now it's San Francisco's turn. They've got to catch Seattle, and that makes it's hard for them to do. I mean, they can't screw anything up. If Seattle wins that game,
you didn't go very far after you just commented on the record, but you just painted a scenario where Seattle could get to 12 wins.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
Because Seattle wins these next 3, that gets them to 9, and they beat San Francisco to get to 10. That means they win if they can. They
could drop the Chiefs game,
Kansas City game. Yeah, win 2 of the last 3. The Rams are certainly beatable. In that group, and then
the Jets.
Yeah, they could get to 12 wins.
Yeah,
I think 11 is probably a good prediction, just because it's the NFL. There's enough parity that stupid fumble or a bad interception.
And I also think 10. I think 10 also gets you into the playoffs. And I think that if you take a look at the schedule and you're really being honest, where are we going to lose 3 games? You'd have to have an upset or 2 in this.
It would have to be San Francisco,
the Chiefs, and one of the other, and maybe the Rams, or the upset. Jets. Yeah.
And honestly, except for this last week, or a week ago when they were in Germany and they just had no energy and it was bad, and they still came back in the end and made a game of it. Except for that game, which has a lot of weird stuff around it, makes me not think that it's particularly valid. The Seahawks have been dominant for the last month. None of these other teams have been dominant.
No. Yeah. What other team other than the Eagles are you scared of in the playoffs? Legitimately, we don't have a chance.
Nah, I wouldn't even say that against the Eagles. Because, Jalen Hurts is been much better this year, but do you trust him in the playoffs?
I mean, he's been playing really well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The last couple of weeks have been a little less.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the Seahawks really have a legit chance here to get to the NFC Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
If they can make a run here. So if they win these next 4 games, drop the Chiefs game, win the last 2, they're 12 wins, 12-5.
12-5 probably puts them in the 2 seed.
Yeah.
And playing probably the Giants.
Yeah.
Again,
Vikings seem to be winning, but yeah, no, I know. Yeah. It'd be, yeah. and then travel, and possibly not have to travel again, if the Eagles drop a game.
Yeah, if the Eagles drop, if the Eagles lose, they would get the first round bye, and then
the Cowboys or the Bucks would travel to Seattle.
Yeah,
possibly the Giants.
Yep,
so possibly San Francisco.
Yeah, if you get San Francisco against the Eagles in round one or in round two, that is a matchup where you could have San Francisco visiting Seattle in the NFC title game. I could totally see that.
Oh, this is so fun. Can you imagine having this conversation on September 1st? It's nuts. It's a completely different team.
I was fully expecting us to be in, okay, what's the draft look like mode by now? And, what changes need to be made? What players are do you go ahead and sit down for the year and maybe cut to save some cap room? And what players do you...
trade deadline would have been in effect. And
what players do you try and get on the field and see what you've got? And
we probably would have played Drew Lock by now.
Yeah.
Gino wouldn't have been winning. You might as well go ahead and throw Lock out there.
It's one of those see what you got kind of moves. Yeah. But no, Seattle's been playing just out of their minds. But I will say if you look at net points, there are two teams in the NFC that stand above everybody else. And they're the Eagles and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys have done this with 3 weeks of Cooper Rush at quarterback.
Yeah.
And they've got the best point differential in the NFC, better than the Eagles, despite 2 more losses. That will give you an idea.
Yeah,
the Cowboys are a much better team than I think people are thinking that they are. They're this kind of looming power that I would be worried about unless the injury bug hits them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, their receivers are just top notch. It's just one of those.
I love their defense.
Yeah, their defense is good, but man, I don't like the Cowboys. So.
Oh, I hate the Cowboys.
Yeah, the Cowboys, I can't even talk about them hardly.
I mean, and most of it comes from their owner. I just hate their owner.
Well, and then they've been just low performance. They've been, they beat us that one time in the playoffs a few years back when we just weren't very good. But other than that, they've just been low performers once they've gotten to the playoffs.
If they've gotten to the playoffs,
they've just been more disappointing, I think, than successful.
Their team, and part of the reason why they're the most hated team in football is their owner, and part of it is also because ESPN and the Cowboys have a huge fan base, and so ESPN's going to pander to them a little bit because it helps their ratings. And every year we're told how good the Cowboys are, only to have them end up, being right around 500.
Yes,
and you can only do that so many years before you're just like, just stop talking about them.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's really kind of the thing. But this year, a year in which nobody's really talking about them because everyone's excited about the Eagles, this might be the best Cowboys team we've seen in a while.
Oof. So I think that's pretty good for this show. The next show is going to be really fun, Keith. We're going to do a mock draft. So, and normally this time of the year, we wouldn't do it, but we're coming out of the bye week. We've got an extra show here. That's kind of our midweek show. That gives us a chance to do not only this show, but the mock draft. And with the Denver Broncos continuing to lose, that pick from Denver that we got in the Russell Wilson trade, that first round pick is currently 5th overall in the 2023 draft, as well as the 35th pick in the second round. Seattle's currently picking 21st in the first round, and I believe 40 something in the second round. And it's just something else. It's crazy. And I kind of practiced. I did a couple mocks today to kind of get ready for the show a little bit, kind of familiarize myself with some of these players. the further you go down into the draft. And it's fun. There's a lot of opportunity here to really improve the team. I'll be very interested to see what your philosophy is, if it lines up with mine, how we treat those value levels in the draft, and what position groups we try to address with those. So that'll be a fun show. So everyone should come back for that. Anything else, Keith?
No, I think let's wrap this up and you know what? Seahawk fans, if you're listening to this, it's been fun this year. It'll continue to be fun. Enjoy it. It was an unexpected year, unexpectedly fun. And, let's just make sure that we enjoy this ride, because what else are we going to do? Right.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving week.
Yes.
So let's give thanks for sure. Absolutely. Fun stuff. All right, Keith. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and we have our own YouTube channel. So check that out. If you're watching the show, you already know that. But if you're listening out there on the audio only side, go check out the YouTube channel and make sure you bash that subscribe button when you do. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.